In this video, I want to show how we can recombine some STL geometry. So these three pieces were separated to print separately, and then it was decided by another user that they have a bigger machine and they would like to combine these three pieces back together to print those at one time rather than at three separate prints. So the question is how to get these back together. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn on the visibility of the origin and see where the origin is located at. And I'd like to have the geometry located about the origin to make it easier to deal with. So I'm going to go to the front view or one of the views, and I'll turn off the visibility of two of the pieces of geometry. And this is the larger piece, so I'm going to move that to the origin. So I'll do move, and for the uh, geometry, I'll select that as the geometry and pick it over here from the browser. Don't pick it from the screen, and that will give you better control over XYZ. And then I'm going to just move this up and I'll pick some location, let's say like about right there. And then I'll go around to this side, and I like that. I might move it down just a little bit. Now there might be some location in particular, and actually I see the origins over here, so I do want to move this over here. But there might be some location on your geometry that makes it uh, more obvious that you should move it rather than uh, just put it in the middle like I'm doing. All right, so actually I see that I want to move this over here. Yeah, and then maybe move that up a little bit. So I've got it pretty much where I want it, I think, for that part. And then I'll do the same kind of idea with the other two components. So I've moved that one, and then I'll turn on the visibility of one of the other components. And so then I want to move that over to here. And so I'm going to uh, look at it, and let's look at this from this view, and I'm going to do my move. And again, I'll select the component itself, not the not on the screen. And so I'll select that, and then I'm going to rotate it around, and I'll move it over, and I'll go to another view, and I need to rotate this again. Okay, and I'll start to translate it into position. And I see that I have this oriented incorrectly, so let's try to figure out uh, what I need to do with this. And let's rotate this 360 degrees. Maybe I have it incorrect that way. It helps if you're familiar with the geometry. So I'm not really familiar with this geometry. This is the first time that I've seen it. So I'm going to uh, just try to get this eyeball to where I think it should be, and then I can look at it from different views until I see that I have it approximately lined up, and then I'll go into more detail on lining this up. So I want to reset this coordinate system so that this is straight up and down, this is straight over, this is straight out. So I'll click on the uh, set pivot, and I'm going to select one of the planes, and I'll select this plane, and then I want to move this coordinate system over here someplace, and then I'll accept that. And now I can zoom in on this. I can move this over, and what I'm looking for are lines that match up. And actually, if you look at the top and bottom, so I can see that this has got to go down a little bit. And so now I'll move this down, and I don't want to get it over top of each other, so I might leave a little gap in there intentionally. We'll see how this all goes together here in a minute. So I've got those lines lined up, and then I'll move to the one of the other views and I'll do the same thing. Now, one thing you don't want to do is I didn't convert this to a prismatic. I want to leave it as faceted because if I converted this, it could change that geometry slightly, and I want these lines to all match up uh, from the STL as it was originally split. I can see that I could move this up a little bit more here. Now I might want to move the coordinate system down, so I'll click on the coordinate system. I'll select one of the planes, and then I'll move it over here to where it's better positioned for me, and I'll say done for that pivot point, and then I can get in here and see this more closely. So I want to move this up a little bit. And I might move it over just a little bit closer, make that gap a little bit smaller. I'm going to intentionally leave a little bit of gap there. So I think I like that. I've checked it from the front. I've checked it from this left side view. I could check it from this view. I get that uh, lined up, and I'll say okay to that. Then I'll repeat for this third coordinate. So or component, or what will be a component right now, it's a mesh body. And so I'll turn on the visibility of that, and I want to move it. I have to pay attention to which one is which. And so I'll do move. I'll select this body, and then I'm going to go around here and look at getting it lined up. So I'll bring it up here, and I'll look at it from different views. And so I see that I need to move it this way some. And I'll need to rotate it at some point to get it better lined up here. So we'll do this rotate. And let's move it down here and move it up here. We can just use this to move in both directions at once. And let's look at it from this view. That looks pretty good there. Look at it from that view. That looks pretty good there. And move it over here a little bit closer. And then we'll start to do our fine-tune motions. So I want this coordinate system again to be lined up with this plane. And so I'll do set pivot, and I'll select this plane, and then I'm going to move this over to a convenient location for me, and I'll move it, say, over to there. I'll say okay to that. Now this is the most common mistake that people forget to do, is click done after changing the pivot point. So I'll click done on that. Then I can come over here and I can zoom in on this, and I'll move this down, I'll move it over, and we can move it in two directions at once here. Uh, and again, I like to leave a little bit of a gap there. So you'll see why here in a couple of minutes. And so I'll move that down. Okay, so I've got these lines lined up. I'll look at it from another view. And let's see, so I need to move it down. Okay, so I'm looking at these lines here that I'm trying to line up. And so, and if you have a lot of trouble, you can just type in numbers to move it. But I can do it, get it close enough uh, by eye, looking at it on the screen. I've got that. We'll look at it from one more view, and uh, it's kind of hard for me to tell where I am in that view. Okay, so I see here that that angle is not quite right yet, and I have to find a view where it's easier to see. And now I'll do that rotate, and I want that coordinate system. So I'll set the pivot point on this plane, and then I'm going to move it up in here where I can see this better, and I'll rotate this. So I'm trying to get this edge right here lined up with that edge. So And here's where I forgot. I forgot to set done after moving my pivot point. Okay, so set done, and then trying to, I got that angle a little better rotated. Now, I don't need to get it perfect, because we'll do that the last step. And let's see if we can move this up now. And so I want to reset that coordinate system again. And I'll move this up here. And I'll say done. And I can move up here. And I want to get this edge right here lined up with this edge. And I might actually even be doing more work than is actually necessary to get this lined up. I don't have to be perfect on this. Let's see if we can rotate that a little bit more though. So I'm going to move this down here. And actually, I actually want to rotate it up here, but I need to see it down here for that rotation. See, I'm trying to get this lined up over here. Yeah, so, whoops, I forgot to say that done. And so doing a rotation in particular can be difficult to get it really lined up well. But I think that's close enough. Okay. I still don't have it lined up perfectly, but we'll line that up here in a minute. Okay. So now I've got these three components more or less lined up. And then I'll convert those. Actually, I haven't converted them to components yet. And I can convert these to solid bodies and then components, or components and then solid bodies. I think I'll just go ahead and convert these now. So I'll do convert mesh, and I'm going to select that one. Now I'm going to leave it on this faceted, because if I set it on prismatic, that could change the geometry slightly. So I'll say okay to that. And then I'll convert the next one. And then I'll convert the last one. So I'll convert this one. And I'll say okay to that. Okay, now once I've done the conversion, I want to create components with this, and I prefer to use this one that we put in the middle. I'll convert that one first. So I'll do create component from that body. Notice that first one we convert is automatically grounded. Then I'll convert the next one, convert that component, and then finally I'll do the last one, and I'll convert that component. Now I've turned on this display component colors so that it's easier to see the three different components that I have. And then I'm going to go into the joints, or I'll do constraints. I'll do a constraint components. And if I can find a relatively flat face, I prefer to do that, but it really isn't critical. So I just need to uh, combine 3 points in this geometry. And so I'll do, say, this point right here to this point right here. Okay, so that moves that. I'll click the plus symbol. I'll do this point right here to this point right there. I'll do a third point, so 3 points will define all of the geometry. Okay, and so I'll say okay to that, and then I'll test it out. So I'll zoom out and I'll try dragging this geometry. It doesn't move. If I drag this geometry, it would move. I want to undo that move, so I'll put that back where it was. And then I'll come in here and get these points. So I'll do my constraints, and I'll do this point to this point, and I'll add another. I'll do this point, and click the plus symbol here. I'll do this point to this point, and I need one more point, and so I'll do plus symbol to add a constraint. And I prefer if I can find only two lines together, but any 3 points, and that should define it. I'll say okay to that. Okay, so I zoom out and I test it by trying to drag the geometry. It doesn't move. And so we're ready to go ahead and print this. as one print.